Chapter 75, So many called to war, how many will return? At the Water Curtain Cave, another month slipped by, equivalent to 10 months on the Blue Star. Chu Xuan spent the majority of this time entrenched in the soul-capturing, evil-nurturing array situated in Two Dragon City, honing his skills. Whenever the spiritual plants ripened or it was time to harvest large blood pearls, he would depart from this world to the nameless market to exchange these goods for the resources he required. Each visit to the market saw him donning a different guise. Having mastered the art of disguise, he had used 3 different identities thus far. Even when brushing past Song Fen, Lu Yin, or the Han-named cultivator, they remained oblivious that Chu Xuan was the same Foundation establishment stage cultivator with whom they had previously traded. With each visit, Chu Xuan could feel the war intensifying. Stalls manned by Qi refining stage cultivators frequently changed hands, sometimes within a matter of days. The self-important Song Fen had fallen in battle, a testament to the merciless nature of this meat-grinder-like conflict that swallowed lives without causing so much as a ripple. The time for Extremian Cave to engage in the war had arrived. A new message awaited Chu Xuan at the sound recording formation of the Water Curtain Cave, left by Li Xuanming, the senior brother of Extremian Cave. Junior brother Chu Xuan, the master commands us to assemble at the training ground. Chu Xuan had long anticipated this day. He gathered his belongings and set off for the Extremian Cave training ground. Upon his arrival, he found that the other Foundation establishment stage cultivators of Extremian Cave had already gathered. Leading them was Li Xuanming, clad in flowing white robes, exuding a martial grandeur. Alongside him stood Liu Zhenxian, Wu Teng, and others, including a somewhat unfamiliar figure. This individual was deeply engaged in conversation with Li Xuanming and seemed to be Chen Jiafen, the recently inducted disciple of Extremian Cave. Junior brother. Li Xuanming, catching sight of Chu Xuan, nodded slightly without further comment. His cultivation had now reached the mid-stage of Foundation establishment, marking him as a prodigy even within the vast ranks of the Heavenly Seal sect. In contrast, Chu Xuan seemed rather unremarkable. It appeared his talents were not as formidable as Li Xuanming had once thought, and any previous wariness he might have had towards Chu Xuan gradually dissipated. Chu Xuan responded with a light nod and a smile. Li Xuanming's lack of wariness towards him was indeed a favorable turn of events. Previously, he had harbored concerns that the senior brother of Extremian Cave might harbor jealousy, potentially forcing Chu Xuan into a dire confrontation. Wu Teng, much like Li Xuanming, merely exchanged greetings with Chu Xuan, offering no further conversation, instead continuing his discussion with Chen Jiafeng. In contrast, Liu Zhenxian approached Chu Xuan warmly to discuss recent happenings. Although Chu Xuan had been vigilantly observing external changes and committing them to memory, he patiently listened to Liu Zhenxian's account. It was clear that this senior brother truly regarded him as both a junior brother and a friend. After a short while, Liu Zhenxian surreptitiously handed Chu Xuan an object. Glancing down, Chu Xuan saw it was a talisman crafted from human skin. Unlike orthodox talismans drawn with cinnabar, this one was marked with twisted, bizarre lines that at first glance seemed nonsensical. Yet upon closer inspection, these lines seemed to coalesce into a terrifying pattern. A demonic talisman containing a Foundation establishment stage tiger spirit, Liu Zhenxian whispered. It might save your life in a critical moment. Chu Xuan's interest was piqued. Where did this come from, senior brother Liu? Clearly, the talisman was of demonic origin. The orthodox arts consisted of array, alchemy, tool refinement, and talisman crafting. Some demonic cultivators exceptionally gifted had adapted orthodox talisman crafting techniques into demonic methods. Demonic talisman crafting involved sealing a living soul within human skin, suppressed by demonic runes, thus eternally binding the soul within the talisman for the user's command. This tiger soul talisman could summon a tiger spirit to combat foes. This tiger spirit was a Foundation establishment stage demonic beast, and now possessed even greater malevolence and strength, at least equivalent to a high-grade magical tool. The potency of a demonic talisman lay in its autonomy, serving as an alternative form of beast control. During subsequent trades with Song Fen, he revealed a wolf soul talisman. However, Song Feng's high price had led to their parting on less than amicable terms. Thank you, senior brother Liu. Chu Xuan accepted the talisman without any pretense. At that moment, a dark shadow suddenly appeared within the training ground. All eyes turned to see it was Wan Wuyin, the patriarch of Extremian Cave. Master, Chu Xuan, Li Xuanming, and the others immediately bowed, addressing him respectfully. Wan Wuyin nodded slightly. Perhaps because he had seized a significant treasure from the native Wu province sects, his complexion appeared particularly robust. I have agreed with the Heavenly Seal sect. The Extremian Cave will soon be entering the war, he declared. As my direct disciples, I cannot attend to each of you personally, so I will grant each of you a high-grade magic tool and a bottle of demonic pills. With a sweep of his storage bag, Wan Wuyin released several high-grade magic tools, allowing his disciples to choose among them. The array of options he provided was plentiful. After some consideration, Chu Xuan selected the Mystic Iron Shield as his defensive magical tool. His previous shield, the Golden Wood Shield, had been severely damaged during an attack by Hui Kong, showing numerous cracks that significantly reduced its defensive capabilities. Lacking the skills to repair it and unwilling to pay a hefty price for a craftsman's services, Chu Xuan had already planned to acquire a new high-grade defensive magical tool. Wan Wuying's offer was timely and aligned perfectly with his needs. As for the demonic pills, known as Fury Chi pills, they were designed to temporarily extract one's latent potential, unleashing a burst of spiritual chi. Crafted personally by Wan Wuying, these were meant as a last resort for preserving life. Chu Xuan also took a bottle. Though he might not need to use them, it was essential to have them. When Chu Xuan received the Fury Spirit pills from Wan Wuying, the old master looked at him with a complex expression. Wan Wuying remembered how Chu Xuan had played a crucial role in rescuing him from captivity at Misty Manor and had been initially surprised by his aptitude. For a time, he even considered imparting all his knowledge to him. However, after several teachings, he did not observe any extraordinary capabilities in Chu Xuan. His insight seemed only on par with Wu Ten, perhaps even less than Liu Zhenxuan, which had somewhat disheartened him. Later, Wan Wuying took in Chen Jiafen, whose talents appeared to rival those of Li Xuanming. Consequently, his attention shifted primarily to Chen Jiafen, and he gradually overlooked Chu Xuan. Wan Wuying then asked, Chu Xuan, what is your current cultivation level? Bowing respectfully, Chu Xuan responded, to report to Master, I remain at the second level of Foundation establishment. He had always been cautious about revealing his true strength. Within the Heavenly Seal sect, there were many factions dissatisfied with the Extremian Cave lineage. Displaying too much power would only draw constant scrutiny and immense pressure from all sides. Wan Wuying sighed softly, all right, go now. So much time had passed, yet Chu Xuan was still at the second level of the Foundation establishment. Was his previous rapid advancement merely a stroke of luck? Li Xuanming and Chen Jiafeng showed no particular reaction, their expressions indifferent. In the world of cultivation, many were like Chu Xuan, briefly brilliant before fading away and meeting a tragic end in obscurity. Go, I await your triumphant return, Wan Wuying said calmly, giving one last look at his four disciples. Yes. Chu Xuan and the others bowed and then turned to leave. So many called to battle, how many will return? Wan Wuying murmured with a soft sigh. Chapter 76, Entering Wu Province, Reaching Iron Wire Mountain. Chu Xuan and his four companions, maneuvering their flying magic tools, departed from the territory of Extremian Cave and entered Wu Province. Humid, sweltering, infested with venomous insects, specters, and possibly indigenous cultivators lurking in every shadowy corner, this was the real Wu Province, a land fraught with peril. Chu Xuan's mind teemed with detailed information about Wu Province which he had consciously gathered over time. Previously not part of the Yu Kingdom, Wu Province was the domain of barbarian tribes to the south of the kingdom. It was only a millennium ago that the Infinite Sect conquered the region, incorporating it into Yu Kingdom. The indigenous sects of Wu Province were established by these barbarians, practicing methods like Jiyu cultivation, ghost nurturing, and corpse refining, all considered demonic arts. The Infinite Sect had adopted many of their techniques, which contributed to its rise as a formidable force of the demonic path within the Yu Kingdom. Aware of the indigenous sect's fearsome nature, the Infinite Sect knew too well the perils of underestimating them. Though these sects might lack a significant number of golden core cultivators, their intimate knowledge of Wu Province allowed them to effortlessly eliminate any invaders in the jungles, swamps, and valleys. After evaluating the gains and losses, the Infinite Sect decided against fully annexing Wu Province, instead treating it as a resource-rich backyard from which various materials could be harvested. Observing this, the local sect maintained a peaceful coexistence with the Infinite Sect. This equilibrium persisted until the fall of the Infinite Sect, when Wu Province was handed over to the Heavenly Seal Sect by the Righteous Five Sects, and thus the war ignited. After advancing a distance, the 5 cultivators split up, each heading towards their designated targets as the full-scale war between the Heavenly Seal Sect and the indigenous sects of Wu Province erupted. To the east of Extremian Cave, over 10,000 li laid the front line. Naturally, the 5 Foundation establishment stage cultivators could not all be deployed in one location. The current battlefront required fresh forces at every turn, particularly fierce at the locations of the Thousand Insect Sect, Blood Fury Sect, and Bone Refining Manor, 3 of the indigenous factions. The specific mission received by Extremian Cave was to conquer the Thousand Insect Sect. This sect was one of the 12 most powerful in Wu Province, commanding nearly 30 smaller factions. The first and second waves of cultivators from the Heavenly Seal Sect had been entangled with the Thousand Insect Sect and its subordinate factions. Their primary method of attack involved the use of GU, poisoning and assassination were just some of the myriad tactics they employed. Li Xuanming and the others each had their tasks, though not directly assaulting the Thousand Insect Sect itself but targeting its affiliated smaller factions. After all, the Thousand Insect Sect was also guarded by Golden Core ancestors. Though they numbered only 2, significantly fewer than those at Heavenly Seal Sect, a Golden Core ancestor was still a force to be reckoned with. Without direct engagement from both sides, there was little room for Foundation establishment stage cultivators to make an impact. First, I'll assess the situation. If the conflict is too intense, I'll simply retreat to the Blue Star. There's no need to take unnecessary risks here. Chu Xuan had long decided on his strategy. Fight if he could win, flee if he could not. After all, with the Blood Mirror at his disposal, he could freely travel between the 2 realms. A day later, Chu Xuan arrived at the outskirts of Ironwire Mountain. Among the affiliated sects of the Thousand Insect Sect, Ironwire Mountain was one of the larger ones. It was guarded by only 6 Foundation establishment stage cultivators, with no Golden Core powerhouses. Recently, a mysterious mist had enveloped Ironwire Mountain, trapping 3 early-stage Foundation establishment cultivators from the Heavenly Seal Sect within it, including a direct descendant of a Golden Core powerhouse from the sect. Chu Xuan accepted the mission to rescue the trapped cultivators. He had not yet reached his destination when he saw thick fog swirling around Ironwire Mountain, with sporadic flashes of magical light visible within it. The reports didn't mention the fog being this dense, Chu Xuan muttered, frowning. He had only taken a few steps when he came upon several dead Qi refining stage cultivators, their bodies strewn across the ground. Numerous civilians who were unable to escape had also perished in the aftermath of the battle. Suddenly, a figure shot out from the mist towards Chu Xuan. He swiftly dodged aside. Upon closer inspection, he saw it was a Heavenly Seal Sect Qi refining stage cultivator, his chest caved in and his right leg severed at the thigh. Several dark, iron wire-like worms were writhing and feasting on his body. Before Chu Xuan could even speak, the cultivator breathed his last in a tragic death. Chu Xuan's frown deepened. Those worms were the infamous Iron Wire worms, Ironwire Mountain's signature GU. Are you the reinforcement? Follow me. Into the fog. A shout came from behind him. Chu Xuan looked back and spotted 2 Foundation establishment stage cultivators, both clad in the Heavenly Seal Sect's Foundation robes, though he did not recognize either of them. Chu Xuan narrowed his eyes and did not rashly approach. It was possible that the 2 cultivators were imposters. Show me your identities, he shouted to the 2 cultivators. Upon hearing this, the cultivators immediately took out 2 tokens from the Heavenly Seal Sect and activated them. The tokens emitted a faint glow. Seeing this, Chu Xuan nodded silently. 2's company, that's reassuring, Chu Xuan thought, not hesitating to join them. He had no desire to venture into Ironwire Mountain alone, especially given the menacing fog. Who knew what horrors lay within it? More companions meant more security. After joining up, the 3 exchanged names. Chu Xuan quickly learned their identities. The burly cultivator was named Zhao Wan, and the tall, thin one was Zhu Yu, both from the second wave of reinforcements. Though they did not explicitly state their cultivation levels, Chu Xuan could sense that both were likely at the early stages of the Foundation establishment. No sooner had the trio set off towards Ironwire Mountain than they saw a figure, blood-soaked and fleeing in panic. Run! Run. The man's eyes were wide with terror. Even upon seeing Chu Xuan and the others, he didn't stop to explain, his pace unrelenting. Chu Xuan gave the man a quick glance and sensed several iron wire worms rampaging through his viscera. Even if he escaped the immediate danger, his death was certain. Chu Xuan's brow furrowed. Was Iron Wire Mountain truly this horrifying? Zhao Wan scoffed, I know that man, a mere rogue cultivator who barely managed to reach the Foundation establishment stage. Don't mind him, let's keep moving. Rescuing those 3 trapped Foundation establishment stage cultivators will net us 300 sect contribution points, a too good opportunity to miss. Just follow me, he assured them. Zhu Yu whispered, Brother Zhao is at the 3rd level of Foundation establishment, almost stepping into the 4th. Chu, do not worry. With him leading, we shall be safe. Chu Xuan nodded. But in the next moment, Zhao Wan began to mutter, it's so itchy, why is it so itchy? He frantically scratched his back. Turning to look, Chu Xuan was shocked to see 2 iron wire worms burrowing fiercely into Zhao Wan's back. Do you guys feel itchy too? Zhao Wan turned to Chu Xuan and Zhu Yu. Zhu Yu suddenly realized that 2 strange white worms were emerging from Zhao Wan's eyes, but he was oblivious. Zhu Yu's mouth hung open in shock. Chu Xuan growled, retreat. There's a powerful GU master nearby. He admitted to himself that he lacked such a stealthy method of GU placement. Unnoticed, Zhao Wan had been afflicted with GU. Zhu Yu swallowed hard and immediately started to run. Hey, where are you guys, or why can't I see you? Zhao Wan's vision had been devoured by the GU worms without his awareness. He didn't realize that Chu Xuan and Zhu Yu had already turned to flee. It's itchy, so itchy. Zhao Wan felt the itchiness transform into pain. Driven mad, he scratched fiercely with his nails, tearing his skin until blood flowed freely. With a heavy thud, he fell from midair, crashing into a mix of blood and mud. The GU worms swarmed over him, engulfing him completely. Chapter 77, The Only Hope Lies in the Immortal. Elsewhere, Chu Xuan and Zhu Yu were nearing the exit of the mist. Suddenly, a cold snort echoed behind them. HMPH, thinking of escaping? Leave your life behind. A foul wind, reeking of blood, struck without warning. Zhu Yu, unable to react in time, was violently hit in the back and sent flying, his fate unknown. Behind Chu Xuan, a crimson blood shadow abruptly appeared, shielding him from this vicious strike. It was the blood evil shadow. Chu Xuan grunted, using the rebounding force to break free from the mist and flee for his life. The Iron Wire Mountain is perilous, beyond my current abilities, he thought. Time to lay low on the blue star for a while. Gazing at the ever-churning mist, Chu Xuan shook his head and swiftly retreated. On the blue star, Chu Xuan once again sat cross-legged within a grand formation at the eye of a storm. Yin evil chi within the formation converged towards him. Not enough, still not enough, he murmured. Even with such an immense amount of yin evil chi to sustain me, it requires painstaking efforts to advance further. The root cause is my own mediocre aptitude. Chu Xuan could not help but shake his head, knowing well his own limitations. Spiritual roots are classified from inferior to common, superior, and ultimate. Above the ultimate spiritual roots are the rare earth and heavenly roots, seldom seen talents. In the entire realm of Yu Kingdom, Chu Xuan had only heard of an ultimate fire spiritual root that appeared 400 years ago. This prodigy was meant to be taken in by the Divine Star Sect, but the heaven-burning sect of the southern Yu Kingdom intercepted and seized the child. This incident had been the root of the long-standing enmity between the Divine Star Sect and the Heaven-Burning Sect. Chu Xuan's own spiritual root was merely a common wood-aligned root, suited for cultivating wood element techniques. His astonishing cultivation speed was only due to the significant difference in the flow of time between the Mystic Azure Realm and Blue Star. While others thought he had trained for merely a month, he had actually undergone 10 months of rigorous cultivation. A thought suddenly occurred to Chu Xuan. Besides spiritual roots, cultivators also possess spiritual bodies, he pondered. Both spiritual roots and bodies are innate, but they can be compensated for through acquired means. However, to remedy a spiritual root, one must at least reach the golden core stage. For me, cultivating an acquired spiritual body is the best approach. Some demonic techniques allow one to extract other spiritual bodies and graft them onto oneself. Alternatively, through certain inhumane methods, like the blood sacrifice of numerous beings, one can create an acquired spiritual body. Chu Xuan contemplated this possibility. It was indeed a viable method. There existed methods to recreate acquired spiritual bodies in the blood evil demon refining scripture, but the requirements were exceedingly stringent. Chu Xuan had previously dismissed the idea, but now, in his quest to hasten his cultivation, he resolved to prioritize this endeavor. The blood evil demon refining scripture details 3 methods to forge acquired spiritual bodies, he mused. The first is the ice-drinking spiritual body. One must consume ice attribute spiritual materials daily and ideally cultivate in an extremely cold environment. After 3 months, the ice-drinking body can reach a minor state of completion, where one's every move is accompanied by the essence of frost. The second is the crimson blood spiritual body. This requires soaking in the blood of foundation establishment stage demonic beasts for 49 days, changing the blood daily. Once minor completion is achieved, one's blood circulation speeds up, greatly enhancing the power of physical close combat techniques. The third is the evil wood spiritual body. This involves consuming wood attribute spiritual materials every 3 days, 33 times in total. Once minor completion is achieved, wounds heal much faster, physical defense is enhanced, and one gains the unique ability to manipulate trees. Chu Xuan pondered these options and dismissed the ice-drinking spiritual body and crimson blood spiritual body. The ice-drinking spiritual body, though potent, did not align with his attributes, and extremely cold materials were hard to come by. The crimson blood spiritual body was even less feasible. Where could he possibly find the blood of 49 different foundation establishment stage demonic beasts? The evil wood spiritual body, however, was well suited to his attributes and not as challenging to undertake. The only question was whether this zombie planet possessed any wood attribute spiritual materials. Seems I need to spend some time searching, he concluded. With that, Chu Xuan rose and, mounting his flying sword, vanished without a trace. On the outskirts of East Lake City, 3 strange mushroommen collapsed, facing the sky. After a few convulsions, they lay still. Wen Gengjian and Teng Jinchuan panted heavily, their tense muscles slowly relaxing. Wen Gengjian glanced at the gaunt Teng Jinchuan and chuckled wryly. "Teng, it seems your body fat isn't serving you well." Teng Jinchuan, still frightened, replied, "Those mushroommen were too resilient. I threw several spears and they didn't die. This body fat isn't good for forming many long spears." Wen Gengjian waved his hand. The survivors who had been waiting nearby rushed forward, dousing the 3 mushroommen in gasoline and setting them alight. Flames roared high, and the corpses sizzled, emitting faint screams as if in agony. Wen Gengjian and Teng Jinchuan stood in silence, gazing at the charred remains. Not long ago, these had been 3 young men from the Black Blade Security Company, reliable and loyal. In just one day, they had been transformed into horrific mushroommen. Now, all that Wen Gengjian, Teng Jinchuan, and the other superhumans could do was to burn their bodies, ensuring the dreadful mushroomization wouldn't spread to others. Another figure then arrived by car. It was Wen Gengjian's cousin, Wen Yun. Wen Gengjian's face lit up momentarily as he asked in a low voice, "Did you get through?" Wen Yun shook his head, his voice even lower, "No contact, and I've received some bad news." Wen Gengjian's expression darkened. "Go ahead." "Some folks from the shit gang told me this," Wen Yun whispered. "Dragon River City has completely succumbed to mushroomization. Yunanqian has vanished, and of the 4 leaders, only Zhongxing survived. The Linjiang army has completely disintegrated." Wen Gengjian's face turned ashen. He could not have imagined that within just over a month of the mushrooms appearing, the situation would deteriorate to such an extent. Even Dragon River City, the stronghold of the Linjiang army, had turned into a city of mushrooms. General Yunanqian, a powerful level 4 superhuman, was nowhere to be found. Wen Gengjian tried to speak but found himself reeling. Wen Yong and Teng Jinchuan quickly steadied him. Wen Yong spoke sullenly, "Brother, we could seek refuge with the ship gang. I've heard they temporarily repelled a group of mushroommen and might have a way to fight them." Wen Gengjian managed a bitter smile. The shit gang had always been at odds with the Linjiang army. As a former soldier of the Linjiang army, and with Black Blade heavily influenced by the same, how could they switch allegiance to the shit gang now? "Boss, I suggest we try to find that immortal again today," Teng Jinchuan said earnestly. The Linjian army is no longer a viable option. Our only hope now lies with that immortal. If he won't help us the first or second time, we'll ask a third or a fourth time. Where there's a will, there's a way. We'll give the immortal whatever he wants. When Genjian sighed deeply, I just fear the immortal might not be interested in what we have to offer. Let's try both, the shit gang and the immortal, he decided. Yong, you go to the shit gang. Tang, let's head to the Haodai Hotel together. We must persuade the immortal to help us. Chapter 78, Mushroom City. Mushroomin. High in the sky, Chu Xuan flew recklessly aboard his flying sword. Some birds, overly bold, attempted to prey upon him but were easily slain by his hand. Gazing down at the desolate cities below, Chu Xuan's eyes sparked with curiosity. Interesting, a mushroom city. His vision captured a city to the east of East Lake City, completely overrun by mushrooms. The ground, walls, corpses, and even telephone poles were festooned with various fungi, red, green, yellow, white. They were everywhere. A gentle breeze stirred, causing the mushrooms to dance lightly, dispersing their spores which drifted toward East Lake City on the wind. Sensing Chu Xuan, a living being, the spores seemed to veer towards him. With a flick of his wrist, Chu Xuan launched a ball of fire. The flames erupted, instantly turning the spores to ashes. Without touching the ground, Chu Xuan stood on his flying sword, surveying the city. Everywhere he looked, mushrooms dominated the landscape. At first glance, the scene appeared vibrantly alive. Yet, a closer sense revealed a profound silence, as if all life had been devoured. It seems a number of interesting beings have emerged during my seclusion, Chu Xuan mused, more intrigued than alarmed. He never considered these creatures a threat. To him, as long as one was sufficiently powerful, all beings were mere insects to be crushed at will. The only distinction lay in the utility. Some were useless, while others could be of great value. Scanning the city, Chu Xuan saw no signs of other life forms. He continued his flight towards the east. Soon, he crossed the borders of Linjian province, reaching the boundary of Hanhai province. Hanhai province, he noted. There are even more mushroom cities here. If I recall, the dominant force in this area is Shitgang. Chu Xuan looked down at the mushrooms spreading across the land like a malignant growth, deep in thought. Hanhai province, Yuhai city. This city was the capital of Hanhai province and the core territory of the Shitgang. It should have been the safest place. However, it was now overrun by mushrooms. Gunfire echoed through the streets and alleys as mushroomen fell, only for more to rise in their place. Those survivors who were slightly contaminated or had inhaled mushroom spores underwent drastic transformations within an hour, and without prompt medical intervention, they too would join the ranks of the mushroomen. These terrifying mushrooms were thus able to sweep through areas unchecked. Die, bellowed the old captain, his muscles bulging alarmingly, his arms now thicker than his thighs. He swung a massive, heavy ship anchor, smashing a mushroom person into a pulp. He was a powerful level 4 enhanced superhuman, specialized like most in his class, with arms that could expand to 4 times their normal size, allowing him to swing weights far beyond normal limits. Old Lo. Another wave of mushroomen is coming, stop them, the old captain roared. However, there was no response from that direction. With a fierce stomp, the old captain crushed the head of a mushroom person underfoot and moved to higher ground for a better view. To his horror, he saw that a superhuman squad in the area had been overwhelmed. His familiar comrade, Old Lo, had mushrooms growing on his left side. Sanity and madness flickered across his face as if two people were struggling in a tug-of-war. Barely holding onto his sanity, Old Lo drew a short knife from his belt and stabbed it into his own arm. The intense pain momentarily gave him the upper hand over the madness. "Captain, kill me," he pleaded. But in the next instant, he lunged ferociously at the old captain. The mushroomization had enhanced his physical strength. Within 3 seconds, he was upon the old captain, his mouth filled with mushrooms opening wide to spray spores. "Rest in peace." Old captain's face filled with sorrow swung the anchor hard. With a sickening crunch, Old Lo's head was smashed into the concrete, mixing red blood and white brain matter. His body twitched momentarily before finally going still. In the distance, intense gunfire continued. Soon, a squad fighting a retreating battle joined the old captain. The leader of the squad was a robust man named Feng Biao. Like the old captain, he had been a fisherman in the East Sea before the zombie outbreak and had fortunately awakened his talents to become a superhuman. How about the north area? Old captain inquired in a hurry. Feng Biao shook his head and spoke in a low voice, "It's fallen. Everyone else is dead except for us." Old captain's face turned dark. Just a month earlier, sporadic mushrooms had begun appearing around Yuhai City, but no one was concerned. After all, the ship gang had previously repelled an attack by a group of mushroommen with ease. Those mushroommen had been fragile, a single level 1 superhuman could take on 2 or 3 of them, and a few survivors could kill them with bullets. People had thought all mushroommen were so weak, and they scoffed at the fall of the Linjiang army, mocking their defeat by such feeble creatures. This complacency had seeped into the ship gang's superhumans, loosening their vigilance. The old captain had ordered daily checks of water and food supplies to ensure they weren't contaminated by mushroom spores. However, his orders hadn't been fully implemented. A failure to fully comply with such measures meant total non-compliance due to the contagious nature of the spores. As a result, a flood-like spread of mushroomization engulfed the north, south, and west districts. Within days, these areas saw a surge of mushroommen, killing countless ordinary people under the ship gang's protection, transforming them into more of their kind. The only apparent escape for the ship gang seemed to be to board ships in the eastern district and flee to sea. But the old captain knew that this was tantamount to seeking death. The ocean was now even more terrifying than the land. Who knew how many sea creatures had mutated in the deep ocean, their enormous bodies possessing immense strength? A mere thrash from them could likely whip up massive waves capable of capsizing ships. Taking to the boats was a desperate last resort. But it seemed now that it was the only option left. The Linjiang army has already disintegrated, and Yinanshan's whereabouts are unknown. Who else can we count on? For the first time, a look of confusion appeared in the old captain's eyes as he glanced at the few remaining men beside him. Feng Biao, seeing the confusion in the eyes of this normally steadfast leader, sighed deeply. The ship gang, the largest force in Hanhai province, could it too disintegrate like the Linjiang army, each man fighting for himself? "Let's go, withdraw to the eastern district, and get on the ships," old captain commanded gravely. "We'll stay close to the coast and avoid the open sea." Yes, Feng Biao and the others nodded. Boarding the ships was a last resort, perhaps even a case of drinking poison to quench thirst. But dying later rather than sooner still made a difference. By preserving their lives now, there might still be a chance for a resurgence in the future. Chapter 79, The Immortal is Coming. However, as they broke through the encirclement of mushroommen and reached the eastern district, they found the squad left to guard the area standing still, their eyes vacant and bodies occasionally twitching. Their bodies were already sprouting various colorful mushrooms. Among these people stood a yellow figure with a strange, umbrella-like cap. It didn't resemble a mushroomman but rather appeared to be a humanoid formed from mushrooms. "My name." "Stinkhorn, pleased to meet you." The yellow figure lifted its head and surprisingly spoke to the old captain and the others. The faces of them went pale. "Did I hear that right? Did it just speak our language?" A commoner cried out in horror, and the others were similarly terrified. Though the speech was halting, it was unmistakably human language. Several years had passed since the zombie outbreak, and they had seen all manner of strange creatures, but never a supernatural being that could talk. "Flesh is frail, join me, become mushrooms," Stinkhorn laughed heartily. Suddenly, the mushrooms all over its body erupted, spewing out a massive cloud of yellow spores, seeming to engulf the old captain and the others in the next instant. Just then, a bird covered in mushrooms flew through the crowd to Stinkhorn's side. The bird's voice was hoarse and grating. "Retreat, hurry. The Immortal is coming for you." Stinkhorn paused, confused. "The Immortal? Impossible, isn't he always in East Lake City? I was about to assimilate them. Can't retreat." The mushroom bird spoke again. "This is an order from in Chap." Stinkhorn frowned. "Big brother." "All right." The cloud of yellow spores it had just released suddenly withdrew and sucked back into Stinkhorn's body. Stinkhorn looked at them deeply, wanting to leave but hesitating, as if undecided. The old captain and Feng Biao prepared to defend themselves, but seeing this, they were momentarily stunned. "What's happening? Neither fighting nor fleeing, what does this mean?" HMPH, consider yourselves a lucky, Stinkhorn snorted coldly and turned to leave. However, just as it turned, a black chain like a giant python descended from the sky. In the blink of an eye, it enveloped Stinkhorn completely, binding it tightly like a rope. Stinkhorn was stunned, instantly filled with shock and rage. Immortal! The Immortal's coming! The mushroom bird cried out, flapping its wings frantically, attempting to escape. Whoosh! A fierce gust of wind blew, causing the old captain, Feng Biao, and the others to shield their eyes. When they looked again, Stinkhorn was nowhere to be seen. The mushroom bird had been split in two, its flesh and mushrooms mixed into a gruesome paste, lifeless on the ground. Feng Biao looked around in astonishment. Where did the yellow mushroom go? The survivors exchanged puzzled looks. Where had it gone? The old captain mulled over the word repeatedly. Immortal. What were the mushroom bird and the mushroomman talking about? Suddenly, as if receiving a signal, the mushroomman began to retreat like the tide. The survivors, standing atop the ruins, looked up to the sky, crying tears of relief and joy. We survived. We made it. The ship gang stands strong. The old captain turned to Feng Biao and the others, speaking sternly. We must keep the matter of the yellow mushroomman to ourselves. The mere fact that a mushroomman could speak was horrifying enough. Their retreat was not a defeat but a strategic withdrawal, which was even more terrifying. It meant they would return sooner or later. However, this information must not reach the general populace as it could undermine their trust in the ship gang. Feng Biao nodded vigorously, glaring at his companions. If anyone leaks what happened today, I'll throw them into the sea. The survivors shivered and nodded vigorously, understanding the grave consequences of divulging such information. How'd Hotel? Chu Xuan observed the yellow mushroomman before him with interest. He had been aware of the situation developing in the Eastern District, where the old captain and Feng Biao had been encircled by this yellow mushroomman, but he had initially decided not to intervene. The lives and deaths of others were of no concern to him. However, from the moment the mushroomman began to speak, it piqued Chu Xuan's interest. Even the demonic beasts of the Foundation establishment stage from the Mystic Azure Realm, which had only opened their spiritual intelligence, could not speak human language. They needed to condense an inner core within their bodies to be able to articulate human speech. Yet, this yellow mushroomman, clearly far less powerful than a Foundation establishment stage demonic beast, could speak. That was the real reason Chu Xuan had intervened. You're called Stinkhorn. Chu Xuan looked down at him with a slight smile. Stinkhorn eyed Chu Xuan fearfully and nodded. Chu Xuan chuckled. So, that immortal you speak of is me. How did you come to know about me? Stinkhorn remained silent. Chu Xuan's smile took on a teasing edge. It seems you respond only to force, not kindness. He extended his hand, summoning the corpse-refining blood fire from his chi-si to his palm. Buzz. The blood-red flames roared, filled with the wails of countless tormented souls. As Chu Xuan brought the fire close, Stinkhorn's surface began to char and curl. Within moments, the scent of roasted mushrooms filled the air. Quite fragrant, Chu Xuan remarked lightly. Ah! Stinkhorn screamed in agony. Fire was its greatest fear, and this immortal could manipulate flames. If you don't answer, you'll become just fuel, Chu Xuan stated calmly. The corpse-refining blood fire continued to burn, swiftly engulfing Stinkhorn's lower half. The aroma of roasted mushrooms grew even stronger, enticing even the zombie-like beings, Lon, Hu, and Bao, who sniffed the air with evident desire. Roar, roar, roar. Bao pointed at Stinkhorn, grinning bashfully as if asking if he could have a bite. Chu Xuan laughed heartily. Of course, once I've cooked him thoroughly, you can eat all you want. Roar, roar, roar. The trio of corpses held excitedly. Chu Xuan's words completely shattered Stinkhorn's resistance. Terrified, it cried out, I'll talk, I'll talk. We have known about you for a long time. We purposely avoided East Lake City. You are strong, a big brother said, and not to provoke you. Chu Xuan's interest deepened at this revelation. We? Big brother? There are more of you. Under his relentless questioning, Stinkhorn had no choice but to reveal everything. Big brother in Cap, second brother Panther Cap, third brother Green Cap, and me, Stinkhorn. Chu Xuan repeated these names, chuckling. These were clearly the types of poisonous mushrooms. After absorbing psionic energy, they had become supernatural beings and adopted these names for themselves. Chapter 80, The Terrifying Power of the Immortal. Stinkhorn, gripped by fear, pleaded, "We have no intention of being enemies with the Immortal. Could you let me go back?" Chu Xuan smiled faintly. "You expect me to release you after you've covertly released spores, set signals, and attempted to infect me with your mushrooms?" Stinkhorn's expression changed drastically, and a fierce look flashed in its eyes. Seizing the moment when Chu Xuan had retracted the corpse-refining blood fire, it violently erupted with mushrooms from all over its body. In an instant, a thick cloud of yellow gas enveloped Chu Xuan, densely packed with spores. If these spores were inhaled, they would cling inside like relentless maggots, making them impossible to expel. They would settle within Chu Xuan's organs, mushrooming him from the inside out, ultimately transforming him into a mushroom. "Die!" Stinkhorn roared. "Interesting," Chu Xuan commented nonchalantly as he enveloped himself in a blood shield. This was a chi refining stage spell, seldom used by him now, but still more than sufficient to block the yellow spores. The spores, alive with malevolent intent, continuously struck the shield, creating ripples across its surface. Yet even a chi refining stage spell was impenetrable to them. Such an attack could be considered on par with a mid-stage chi refining cultivator, Chu Xuan noted with amusement. "Release me. Big brother, second brother, third brother, they will arrive soon." Stinkhorn threatened viciously. Chu Xuan merely smiled and waved his hand casually, incinerating the surrounding yellow spores with corpse-refining blood fire. Even the spores that tried to burrow into his pores were repelled by his spiritual chi. Don't kill me." Stinkhorn howled in terror as it saw its doom approaching. Chu Xuan, uninterested in further dialogue, intensified the corpse-refining blood fire, completely engulfing Stinkhorn. Its screams abruptly ceased, and the scent of roasted mushrooms filled the entire rooftop. At Chu Xuan's nod, Bao was the first to rush forward, grabbing the roasted mushroom and devouring it eagerly, savoring every bite. Who had taken several bites and then, from the remains of Stinkhorn's head, he unearthed an irregular yellow crystal, presenting it to Chu Xuan as if offering a treasure. What's this?" Chu Xuan examined the yellow crystal, deep in thought. It appeared to be Stinkhorn's psionic core. He could feel the strong psionic energy pulsating within, far surpassing any supernatural creature's psionic core he had encountered before. Could this possibly serve as a wood attribute spiritual item? Chu Xuan mused, his interest piqued. If he wanted to cultivate the evil wood spiritual body, he would need to refine a wood attribute spiritual item every 3 days, a total of 33 times to achieve a minor completion. Its energy might not reach the level of a wood attribute spiritual item, but I can give it a boost. Chu Xuan recalled another method from the Blood Evil Demon refining scripture. For righteous cultivators, spiritual items were rare treasures, obtained either by spending a fortune in markets or by searching through mountains and rivers over long periods. But for demonic cultivators, spiritual items could be created, provided one had a suitable seed. For wood attribute spiritual items, a wood attribute seed was needed. To Chu Xuan, Stinkhorn's psionic core seemed an ideal candidate. To create a wood attribute spiritual item, a significant amount of wood attribute beans is needed. Fortunately, there is plenty of mushroom in here. Chu Xuan smiled. He instructed, "All of you, go out and capture as many mushroomen as you can. The more, the better." Roar, roar, roar. The 3 corpse puppets roared and streaked out like 3 flashes of black light. Chu Xuan then selected a flat piece of land and began to set up an array. The array for creating a wood attribute spiritual item was called the 100 Woods Nurturing Spirit Array. It sounded like a righteous cultivator's array, but it was, in fact, an unequivocal demonic array. This was because cultivators possessing a wood attribute spiritual root could also be thrown into this array as nourishment to foster the wood attribute spiritual item. In the sprawling expanse of the Great Dream Marsh, located at the Tri Province junction of Hanhai, Linjiang, and Jinshan, a vast and vibrant ecosystem thrived. Before the zombie outbreak, it was the largest ecological preserve in the Han country, attracting numerous tourists daily to explore its native flora and fauna. Known for its diverse fungi, over half of the country's mushroom species were discovered here. No one had anticipated that after psionic energy enveloped the globe, these fungi would develop sentience and form a massive collective. At this moment, thousands of mushroomen lay in wait within the marsh, ready for orders. High above, two distinct mushroom figures stood. On the left was a small, dark figure almost entirely obscured by a black cap. On the right stood a robust, emerald figure with a green cap. Big brother, I was about to fully assimilate the human forces in Jinshan province. Why call me back suddenly? Green Cap asked in a low voice. In Cap responded gravely, the fourth brother was captured by the Immortal. Green Cap was taken aback, captured by the Immortal. We must rescue him quickly. In Cap shook his head, his face expressionless. No, abandon him immediately. The Immortal's terror I have long witnessed. I estimate he's already dead. Green Cap dared not argue. Among the four brothers, In Cap was the strongest and wisest. Without him, they would never have ventured beyond the Great Dream Marsh, as the supernatural creatures here alone were a formidable threat. So, you called me back for this? Where's the second brother? Green Cap asked again. In Cap nodded, the second should be on his way back now. The Immortal has made moves, we don't know if he's targeting us. Let's lay low for a while and watch his actions. Green Cap suddenly asked, what if the Immortal comes for us? In Cap shook his head, it will take the Immortal some time to locate our stronghold. Even if he finds it, reaching here will take him time. I've hidden many mushrooms around the Great Dream Marsh, they will detect any approach by the Immortal immediately. Don't worry. Green Cap nodded, all right then, I'll follow your lead and remain hidden for now. Just then, a sword hum pierced the sky. A figure in black, standing on a flying sword, appeared abruptly before them. It's too late to think of hiding now, Chu Xuan said with a smile, looking at the two mushroommen. In Cap and Green Cap were both startled. They had just been discussing the Immortal a moment ago, and now he was already there in front of them. Chapter 81, Little Grass King. Chu Xuan, observing the two articulate mushroommen, revealed a slight smile. Having set up the 100 Woods Nurturing Spirit Array and created a wood attribute spiritual item, he had begun searching for the so-called Big Brother, Second Brother, and Third Brother. Reviewing maps of the surrounding provinces and analyzing the attack and retreat patterns of the mushroommen, he quickly surmised that they originated from the northern part of Hanhai province. Combining this with the fact that the Great Dream Marsh was renowned for its diverse fungal life, Chu Xuan deduced that their stronghold was likely located there. Navigating on his flying sword, his journey was uneventful save for a few overconfident birds that he effortlessly dispatched. Even if he was wrong and the Great Dream Marsh was not the mushroommen's main base, the trip wouldn't be a waste. The marsh was teeming with a variety of life forms, potentially housing formidable supernatural creatures. Upon reaching the outskirts of the Great Dream Marsh, Chu Xuan immediately noticed mushroommen lurking in dark corners, underwater, in dead tree trunks, and even underground. It became clear to him that this was indeed the mushroommen's stronghold, and his guess was confirmed. Kill. In Cap growled, his voice sending ripples through the air. The once tranquil marsh erupted as countless mushroommen awakened from their hiding spots and surged towards Chu Xuan in a frenzy. Chu Xuan deployed the corpse nurturing tower, and the three corpse puppets transformed into streaks of black light, tearing through the mushroom ranks. Wherever they passed, mushroommen were thrown backward, chests caved in, heads burst open, or bodies torn in half. They stood no chance against his might. At that moment, Green Cap puffed up its body, releasing a cloud of green spores toward Chu Xuan. However, with a casual grasp, a gigantic claw materialized from thin air, clenching tightly around him. The cloud of green spores was instantly incinerated by the corpse refining blood fire, emitting high-pitched squeals as if numerous tiny lives were perishing in the flames. Green Cap, tightly gripped by the yin evil demon claw, made sounds as if it was under immense strain. Painful screams escaped its mouth. In Cap watched in horror. Green Cap was nearly as strong as it was, yet it stood no chance at all against Chu Xuan's power. Immortal, we don't wish to be your enemies, In Cap declared, his gaze fierce. But if you push us, we will fight with everything we have. Chu Xuan looked on with interest. Oh. Let's see what you've got. With a roar of kill, In Cap suddenly unleashed a cloud of black spores from beneath its feet, shrouding itself completely. In a surprising turn it fled. Chu Xuan, smart enough to know when to run. But escape was just wishful thinking in front of him. Go, Hui Kong, Chu Xuan said nonchalantly. Whoosh! The evil soul chain shot through the air, snaking like a black python and instantly catching up to In Cap from behind. A ferocious, bald-headed spirit burst forth from within the chain, Huikon, the battle monk from the Golden Dragon Temple. With a cackle, Huikon pounced, and Chap immediately felt as if a cold, malevolent beast was targeting it. Its speed slowed just enough for the evil soul chain to wrap it up tightly. Moments later, the chain dragged Chap back to Chu Xuan's side. Chap's eyes darted around, looking for a chance to release a spore cloud, but Chu Xuan swiftly slapped both Chap and Green Cap on their heads. The raging corpse refining blood fire burst forth, incinerating them into two piles of charred remains. No chances were given. "Let's go home," Chu Xuan said, turning away. "Pity we didn't catch the third one. We couldn't wrap this up in one go." Chu Xuan shook his head in mild regret, contemplating the one that got away. The marsh was quieter now, the immediate threat neutralized, but the air still hummed with the tension of unfinished business. As Panther Cap led his followers through the forests, a sense of urgency gripped him. Cap had warned him that the Immortal was targeting them and they needed to abandon all their engagements and return to the Great Dream Marsh immediately. The terrifying reputation of the Immortal was something Panther Cap had been aware of for quite some time. The mushroom spores, their primary method of information gathering, had relayed countless pieces of intelligence and news back to them, including activities in East Lake City. The spores had reached East Lake City several times, carried by the wind, birds, and even zombies. These were their methods of dissemination. However, the mushroommen were surprised to find that East Lake City lacked suitable hosts for their parasitism. The human population was sparse and there were no zombies to be found. Back then, the intelligence of the mushroommen was not very developed, and the four leaders, the Mushroom Brothers, were still naive in their understanding of the world. They instinctively avoided East Lake City due to these unfavorable conditions. As they assimilated more humans and supernatural beings, the intelligence of the Mushroom Brothers grew. Eventually, they realized that East Lake City was a forbidden zone inhabited by an immortal. In the eyes of the Immortal, all supernatural beings were mere insects, the only distinction being between those who were useless and those who were useful. Every powerful supernatural being that had risen in the southeastern provinces had met its end at the hands of the Immortal. Even the ambitious zombie empress, who loved to expand her territory, dared not extend her reach into East Lake City. The Immortal was known to operate out of East Lake City and its surroundings. Panther Cap could not understand why the Immortal had suddenly turned his attention toward them. As he pondered and hastened his pace, a sudden chill gripped him as he saw a streak of sword light flash overhead, disappearing as quickly as it appeared, swift like lightning. That was the Immortal's doing, he realized. It came from the direction of the Great Dream Marsh. Could it be that my brothers are dead? A great fear welled up inside Panther Capital. He immediately hid, thankful that the sword light was high above and seemed in a hurry to return somewhere, not bothering with the ground situation. His presence went unnoticed. After waiting 10 minutes following the disappearance of the sword light, Panther Cap cautiously emerged from his hiding spot, his eyes filled with hatred as he looked in the direction the light had gone. "I can't stay in the Great Dream Marsh any longer, I must leave this place. I'm the last one left, I must avenge my brothers," he resolved, clenching his teeth. Just then, he sensed something unusual. Whirling around, he spotted a tender green sprout not far off on the ground. The small grass, less than 30 centimeters tall, swayed in the wind like a green sprite, its vibrant green color starkly contrasting with the surrounding apocalyptic wasteland. It seemed more like something out of a pristine forest. Panther Cap relaxed. "Grass King, it's you. I thought you were some other supernatural being." His eyes burned with fervor. "So, are you here to help me?" This sprout of grass was as powerful as the Mushroom Brothers, another extraordinary being in its own right. Nobody knew why a mere weed could become supernatural, and the Mushroom Brothers had wisely never asked. Chapter 82, The Future of Black Blade. Long before, the Mushroom Brothers had forged an alliance with the Grass King, agreeing to mutual non-interference and mutual support. Recently, on the advice of the Grass King, the Mushroom Brothers had decided to expand their territory from the Great Dream Marsh. However, the Mushroom Brothers were always puzzled as to why the Grass King remained solitary, never seeking to expand its own territory. "I am here to help you, of course. Hurry, the Immortal has already arrived in the Great Dream Marsh." The tender voice of the Grass King emerged from the small green sprout. Panther Cap pointed in the direction of the fading sword light. "I've seen it, the Immortal just flew out of the marsh. It's likely that my brothers are all dead." The Grass King expressed surprise before asking, "What will you do then? Will you fight the immortal to the death?" Hatred flickered in Panther Cap's eyes. "Of course, I want revenge. But not now. I will take my followers far from the Great Dream Marsh to find a new territory where we can secretly gather strength. When I become a level 6 supernatural being, I will return to kill the immortal and avenge my brothers." Panther Cap looked at the Grass King. "We are allies. You will help me, right?" "Of course, we are allies, eternal allies," the Grass King nodded. Panther Cap felt moved. "Thank you." "You're welcome," the Grass King smiled. The next moment, numerous grass roots burst from the soil, piercing into Panther Cap's body. These roots had been lying in ambush all around him and now emerged suddenly, leaving him no time to react. "Why are you attacking me? Weren't we allies? Didn't we agree that you take the central provinces and we take the eastern ones?" Panther Cap's psionic energy was rapidly being drained. He howled in pain and cursed in anger as the Grass King increased the intensity of the extraction. "I dare not kill the immortal," the Grass King said calmly. "I only encouraged you to expand so that you would expose yourselves deliberately." In its view, the Mushroom Brothers were a significant threat. Should their power grow, it could potentially endanger its own safety. Rather than wait for that day, it was better to set a trap and lead them to their own destruction. Panther Cap's eyes widened in rage. "You." He couldn't finish his sentence. The draining of his psionic energy was so severe that he was rapidly losing his intelligence. Within minutes, the last of the Mushroom Brothers was drained of all psionic energy, turning into a dried-up husk. The Grass King looked in the direction of the departing sword light. "Immortal, may we never meet. Even though it was the golden rain that awakened my intelligence, I still do not wish to encounter you." The Grass King retracted its roots and wrapped itself in its leaves, quickly forming into a sphere. The sphere rolled along the ground and swiftly disappeared from sight. The squeal of brakes tore through the silence as Wen Yong's van screeched to a halt. He leaped from the vehicle, his face a mask of despair as he surveyed the bridge ahead, completely overrun with mushrooms. Tasked by Wen Gangjian to seek assistance from the ship Gan, he had left Black Blade Security Company, hoping they could help stem the southward tide of mushroommen. But now, the very path to the ship Gan was also claimed by the encroaching fungi, signaling that even the ship Gan was in peril. "What do we do?" "Go back." Wen Yong sighed deeply. "Who's there?" "Don't you know this is ship Gan territory?" a worry voice called from beneath the bridge. Wen Yong looked down to see a small boat with 2 middle-aged men aboard. He sighed in relief and quickly explained the situation, ending with a plea, "Can you help me contact the ship Gan's leader? We have no one else to rely on. Whatever the ship Gang wants, we will provide." The 2 men exchanged a glance, their expressions odd. Yuhai City was attacked by mushroommen just 2 days ago, and several superhumans died, one of them said. "We probably can't help you." Wen Yong's face fell. The ship Gang had been attacked too. But he quickly seized on a crucial piece of information. Did the ship Gang repel the mushroommen? "They did, but the casualties were heavy," the other man replied. "How exactly they repelled them, we don't know. All we heard was that the mushroommen suddenly ran away." Wen Yong was taken aback. "They ran away? I have a walkie-talkie, I can ask the boss for you," the calmer of the 2 offered. "Thank you, brother." Wen Yong expressed his gratitude. Moments later, the reply came through, "The ship Gang doesn't have the resources to help Linjian Province's forces. You're on your own." Wen Yong's expression froze. Okay then." He climbed back into his car like a zombie, turned around, and headed back the way he had come. The ship Gang wouldn't help. The mushroommen were unstoppable. Was there a future for Black Blade? Would they have to relocate en masse as they had when facing the zombie horde? As he drove back, Wen Yong's thoughts drifted to the immortal. How the initial zombie tide had vanished remained a mystery, but it was clear it had something to do with the immortal. Would the immortal intervene again with the mushroommen moving south? "The ship Gang won't help. The immortal is our only hope now," he murmured, a flicker of hope reigniting in his eyes. "I hope my cousin can persuade the immortal." At the Haodai Hotel, no sooner had Chu Xuan returned than he immediately cast the psionic cores of Ink Cap and Green Cap into the 100 Woods Nurturing Spirit Array. Inside the array, the remains of mushroommen had amassed like a small mountain. At a rough count, there were at least 3,000 bodies. Under the influence of the array, these carcasses would transform into rich energy, infusing into the psionic cores of Chap, Green Cap, and Stinkhorn, and over time, metamorphosing into wood attribute spiritual items. Given the current pace, they should take shape within a year at most, Chu Xuan mused, a smile playing upon his lips. It remains to be seen, however, just how many would attribute spiritual items will ultimately emerge. If the energy infused was sufficiently abundant and concentrated, a single seed could yield multiple spiritual items. Were this the Mystic Azure Realm, merely procuring spiritual wood would cost a vast sum of spirit stones. The spirit stones required to create wood attribute spiritual items were only about 20 to 30% less than buying the items outright. But here on Blue Star, spiritual wood could be wholly substituted with mushrooming, a most lucrative venture indeed. I must not exterminate the mushrooming, Chu Xuan pondered. It would be prudent to cultivate a few more, even if they are not quite as formidable as the mushroom brothers. In doing so, I would secure more psionic cores, enabling the creation of additional wood attribute spiritual items. With this thought, Chu Xuan promptly dispatched Lom and other corpse puppets to capture more mushrooming and breed them. There would be ample need for their selfless offerings in the future. Just then, Chu Xuan raised an eyebrow. Black Blade's people have come looking for me again. Chapter 83, Pledge of Allegiance. When Genjian and Teng Jinchuan stood anxiously outside the Haodai Hotel, where the mist churned incessantly as if concealing a frenzied dragon. This was their fifth attempt in recent days to summon the immortal residing within. Sadly, there had been no response, their calls had sunk like stones in the ocean. Yet, they could not afford to give up. Wen Genjian was acutely aware that the lives of hundreds from Black Blade rested upon the shoulders of its few superhumans. If they did not strive and fight, all would inevitably perish. Immortal, please assist us, Wen Genjian pleaded with all his might, his voice earnest. The mushroommen are too numerous, we are powerless against them. Whatever you desire, if it lies within our power, we will deliver it to you. His plea was made without the aid of loudspeakers or recordings, spoken each time from his own lips, lending the appeal a grave sincerity. The mist continued to swirl silently. The immortal did not appear. Teng Jinchuan's face was etched with bitterness. Let's go, boss. Wen Genjian sighed and turned to leave. As they turned, they were startled to find a figure standing behind them. Black hair, black eyes, clad entirely in black, it was the immortal. Wen Genjian and Teng Jinchuan were simultaneously shaken and elated. Immortal? Chu Xuan inquired calmly, you just said you could give me anything I want. They nodded vigorously without hesitation. Chu Xuan's smile hinted at irony. What if I wanted you to become zombies, would you agree to that too? The two exchanged a glance, seeing the fear in each other's eyes. But after a moment of fear, Wen Genjian and Teng Jinchuan solemnly nodded again. We would, they affirmed. If our lives could save the hundreds in Black Blade, we would sacrifice ourselves willingly. Chu Xuan said no more. Silence fell between them for a moment. Eventually, Chu Xuan spoke nonchalantly, the leaders of the mushroommen are dead, and the rest pose no threat. You need not worry any longer. When Genjian and Teng Jinchuan were stunned, their eyes wide with immense relief. The leaders were dead. Truly. Instinctively, when Genjian wanted to voice his inquiry but then realized the immortal had no reason to deceive them. He immediately felt at ease. Thank you, immortal. The two bowed deeply to Chu Xuan. Do not rush to express gratitude, there are matters I require your assistance with, Chu Xuan said casually. When Genjian responded sullenly, please command us, immortal. Black Blade is ready to serve at your beck and call. I need you to gather intelligence, the more the better, Chu Xuan stated calmly. From Linjiang Province, Hanhai Province, even to the Han country. All information on supernatural beings is what I seek. Although he could control the flying sword to search for supernatural beings, just Linjiang Province alone was vast enough to compare with nearly half of Wu Province. It was preferable to obtain intelligence beforehand and then proceed with the hunt, thus saving time. Most of his time was devoted to cultivation, to breaking through to higher realms. Such time should not be wasted lightly. Such tasks, if given to the original corpse puppets, were slightly troublesome. Only corpses like Lom, Hu, and Bao possessed the intelligence akin to normal humans. Lower-ranked corpse soldiers lacked brain capacity. They were not suitable for such tasks. Chu Xuan felt that the few from Black Blade Security were quite capable. Wen Ganjian and Tang Jinchuan were of superior mind and reliable. We are willing. Upon hearing this, Wen Ganjian and Tang Jinchuan were delighted and immediately nodded. To serve the immortal was an immense honor. To serve me is to never rebel, for all eternity, Chu Xuan said indifferently. Should there be any betrayal, let your bodies be devoured by 1,000 corpses and your souls barred from reincarnation. Wen Ganjian and Tang Jinchuan shuddered. Such words from another might be dismissed as bravado. But coming from the immortal, they believed he truly possessed such powers. Both took a deep breath and declared sullenly, "We are at the immortal's command." Chu Xuan nodded slightly, flicking his finger lightly. 2 psionic cores landed precisely in front of them. "Swallow them," Chu Xuan said. This. Both Wen Ganjian and Tang Jinchuan were taken aback at the psionic cores, the size of pigeon eggs. Such large psionic cores, as surely they were at least 3rd level. Could we consume them? Consuming a psionic core required choosing one that matched or was lower than one's own level. Forcing a higher level psionic core could greatly increase the risk of failure. One might be normal 1 second and a bloodthirsty monster the next. Wen Ganjian swallowed hard. "Immortal, we cannot simply consume psionic cores, it could be lethal." Chu Xuan looked at him and calmly stated, "With me here, you will not die." Wen Ganjian and Tang Jinchuan exchanged a glance, reassured by his words. Wen Ganjian gritted his teeth, picked up the 3rd level psionic core, and shoved it into his mouth. Crunch! His teeth crushed the core as if it were candy, quickly transforming into dense psionic energy that surged through his limbs and body. The violent foreign psionic rampaged within him like a wild buffalo. In the blink of an eye, blood seeped from every pore on Wen Ganjian's body. Veins on his forehead bulged as he clenched his teeth tightly, a look of intense agony on his face. His eyes bulged out like those of a goldfish, streaked with blood as if he were about to turn into a zombie. Tang Jinchuan watched in utter fear, convinced his friend was turning. Chu Xuan observed Wen Ganjian thoughtfully. His condition resembled that of a cultivator who had deviated during practice. For cultivators, such deviation meant bleeding from every orifice and potentially bursting apart. For superhumans, it meant complete zombification. To alleviate a cultivator's deviation, one needed to inject external spiritual chi to clear their blocked meridians. Presumably, the process was similar for superhumans. Moreover, psionic energy was inferior to spiritual chi. Chu Xuan only needed to intervene slightly to resolve Wen Ganjian's current condition. Watching the pained Wen Ganjian, Chu Xuan unleashed his spiritual sense, enveloping him. In an instant, he saw a massive accumulation of psionic energy in Wen Ganjian's chest. He flicked his finger. A strand of spiritual chi burst forth, piercing directly into Wen Ganjian's chest and breaking the blockage. At that moment, it was as if the skies had cleared. The psionic energy quickly dispersed, flowing to where it should naturally go, his organs, bones, blood, and muscles. Within a minute, the agony on Wen Ganjian's face visibly eased. Soon, he lay quietly on the ground, feeling the psionic energy transform his body. This spectacle left Tang Jinchuan wide-eyed and profoundly shaken. Immortal, this truly was the work of an immortal. Did this not mean that from now on, as long as they collected enough psionic cores, they could advance to higher levels without any danger? No other supernatural had such a privilege.